Hey there, it's Marcia from SLP Now, and I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes struggle with mixed groups. And I have read a lot of research saying that embedded practice is amazing, use literacy. And the first time I tried it, or the first several times that I tried it, it wasn't easy. I didn't feel like I was being effective. It was hard to target my goals, and it was kind of a hot mess. Like, the students weren't totally engaged. So I knew that other SLPs out there were doing this, and it was working for them, so I had to try and figure it out. And that's where this pocket chart comes in. So I just wanted to give you a tour of that, but before we dive into that, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit because we talked about, like I mentioned, literacy-based therapy, and I have developed a bit of a routine that I use with my students, and there are 5 steps of kind of working through a book, and I did a webinar on that in the SLP Now membership, and I'm working on putting together some resources to share that with you as well. But that is kind of the ground framework, so if you are an SLP Now member, go check out that video. If you're not, stay tuned because there will be more information, and I think you'll still be able to pick up some ideas to use this pocket chart and kind of make it your own, but that'll give a little bit more of the groundwork behind why I did it this way. But let's just jump in. So when we're using a book in therapy, we're often trying to target a lot of different goals. So we have vocabulary, grammar, pragmatics, and all of those different pieces, and there's several subsets of all of those as well. So that's why I created this word wall to kind of glue everything together. So we have the book, and that's amazing, and the book is the perfect vehicle for us to move through the different levels of practice, so we can do some targeted practice. We can increase in awareness of the targets and kind of move through that continuum from practicing in isolation or in smaller units to an end product at the end of the book, which is really exciting. Some of my students create their own stories. Some of them they retell the narrative using their perfect grammar, things like that. So it's a really nice way to build up the skills. And if we have a set amount of targets, as in this chart, then it makes it really easy, and we're setting up students for success to practice these things in a meaningful context. So let me show you a little bit more of this. So this is just a pocket chart that I found on Amazon. I can share the link in the blog post related to this video. But I created these cards for the different parts of speech. And for some of my students, it is appropriate to target the different parts of speech, and we'll do some teaching, and we'll talk about what a noun is and what a verb is. But for some of my other students, I just use the color coding system, and I just have them match the colors. So this is using the modified Fitzgerald key, which is often used in AAC as well, to just color code the different parts of speech to make it easier to navigate. So I'm leveraging that to help support my students as well. But then we have the different parts of speech here, and at the very bottom I have sentence strips. And I really like to involve my students in the creation of this pocket chart. So I typically target one book for about a month, and it's an entire unit, and we really dive in deep, and that gives everyone, the mixed group, the opportunity to really understand the vocabulary and master the grammar targets and all of that in that context. So I think it's really powerful, and it's something that we work on together. And there's a couple ways that I do it. So in the SLP Now membership, I analyzed 100 different books, and I pulled out all of these targets. And so I have all the nouns and the verbs and the adjectives and all of that. So sometimes I might pull out the list to make it easier for myself, and we'll fill in the cards. And depending on the group, I might do it, or especially if it's the beginning of the year, I might do this part for them, and then they can earn the awesome privilege of creating their own cards, which just means more practice, but they don't know that. So that's a lot of fun. And so I use the targets that I picked out. I'll pull up that sheet for whichever book we're reading, and then we'll fill in some of the cards depending on what the students are working on. And if all of my students happen to be working on goals related to verbs, I might fill in all the nouns and all of that and then just have them focus on that. But if I have a mixed group where one student is working on multiple meaning words and another student is working on irregular nouns and the other student is working on irregular past tense verbs, I'm going to give each of them a couple cards, and together they can fill out this chart and get meaningful practice for their targets. So what's the point in filling out this chart, right? It's just a word wall. So a couple of reasons. One, it's a collaborative project, so the students get to support each other, and they get to model their different targets. It increases awareness of the targets, because if we did that even if they don't make the cards, I will tell them, like, these are your cards. You get to master these. And so then they can work on building that and have ownership of that target, and then know, oh, this is what I need to focus on. This is what I'm working on. And then we can set them up for success. So if we're working on a vocabulary word, for example, like if we start with a word and we do that pre-practice before we start reading the book, we can look for that word in the book, and then it's like citing a celebrity because whenever they see that word, they get really excited, and it increases that salience, and it gives them, and I think this is just backtracking a little bit, this is a meaningful way to target that, because we remember stories. Like, humans are programmed to remember stories. That's how we connect with people. And some of our students with these delays might not remember all of the pieces, but the fact that there's a story with the pictures that we've been engaging with for several weeks makes it that much easier. And then they finally have something to hang it off on. If we're just doing drill while playing a game, it gives them that repeated practice, but it doesn't give them anything to hang that onto. That irregular past tense verb is just flying around, and it's flying around enough for them to remember it during the drill, but then it's just going to keep flying away. It's not going to make a home and hang on to that tree or whatever. That's a horrible, horrible metaphor, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. But it just makes it more meaningful, and if the characters come alive, that story comes alive, and then when they're thinking about that vocabulary word, they're connecting it to the things that person did, that movie that they made in their head, that word lives in that context too, and it's just a really powerful way to target those goals. So like I said, we fill these out, and then we have the sentence strips, which once we have mastery of, okay, what's the past tense for ride? And they're not going to say roded, they're going to say rode or righted, not righted, rode. And that's what they'll say. And then once we get that basic level, and once we've gotten to practice that in a little bit more of a drill fashion, using the different words that we selected, we get to start building that together, and all of the students get to start pulling their targets together. And it's a great way to work on syntax too. So if we're working on compound sentences, complex sentences, simple sentences, we can use these sentence strips and use the color coding system. So there are garage sale stickers. I'll just pull out a sheet here. So garage sale stickers, they happen to have the colors for the modified Fitzgerald key, which is pretty nifty. So I sometimes use these, but you really don't need those because you can use markers. And just a way to help scaffold my students and to make this a little bit easier, this is not a good example. So I made labels, and you don't have to print these. I am just a freak and I like doing stuff like this, but you could just use any label and write preposition on it using this marker, because this happens to be the color for prepositions, and then it'll give that support to the students. And you can even have the students make the labels for these, so it helps them remember what it is. But it just makes it easier for me, because now I have it pretty much memorized after doing it. But then if I want them to work on a specific sentence structure, I might prep this ahead of time, or we might do it together during therapy, but I'll grab one of these cards. And then depending on the level of the student, I might just put dots for what I want them to match, or I will outline the this here so that they can fit in the words, and then we'll make all sorts of sentences, and we'll use all of their targets. So the kid working on the irregular past tense nouns will get to use the irregular past tense nouns in the sentence, and they'll all contribute their parts and make a meaningful whole, and then they'll get to model that for each other. And then if we end up with a lot of sentence strips, we can make a story or all sorts of things. And then a couple tips with these sentence strips. Like I got a pack of 100 strips for like $5. You can also just cut up paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But the cool thing is that if you can laminate them and reuse them, you can, so they're a little bit more durable. I usually just keep them, sometimes I put in the time to get them laminated, but I will just keep them, and my students are, like, we talk about being respectful and how we like take care of our things, so we take pretty good care of them, and then we can reuse them, and it's really fun to be able to build like a whole story using all the sentence strips, and the kids get so excited, and it's a good way to build up. So we might not do that at the beginning of the year when we're first learning. We're kind of ramping up and gaining mastery of these different concepts, but especially once we're making more progress and the students are kind of used to that routine, we get to build some really big stories using the sentence strips. And sometimes we'll use the sentence strip and just write it down in a book or record it in some other way. We can snap pictures, like if we're using some of the same sentence structures over and over, we can put the words on the sentence strip, take a picture, put those words back, make a new sentence, take a picture, and then we can kind of scroll through and do that. And then another cool thing about these cards is that, well, they'll stay up for all of the groups. So if you're using a similar theme with your group, or if you're using the same book with multiple groups, you can use this. And then the cool thing is that at the end, the students get to keep the cards that they mastered. So I have little vocabulary books that I set up for them, and then they get to add their card, and it's kind of like an ownership reward thing, and they get pretty excited about it. It's the silly things. Sometimes they get a little bit of a like glitter washi tape or something, just as like if they really rocked something. And you can have competitions, like if you guys hear Johnny say this word at school, then you get to put glitter washi tape on your card, and they get really excited over the little things like that. But hopefully that kind of helps explain why I use this crazy pocket chart, and it gives you some ideas. There's really a lot that goes into it, so hopefully this at least makes some sense, right? And it gives you some ideas. And it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There are the cool thing about this is that there are so many ways to modify it, and we can really make it suit the needs of our students, which is amazing, right? That's what we do. And that's an awesome part of our job, getting to use the creative parts of our brains to figure out solutions for our students. And I think this is a very versatile tool that we can use to help a number of different students. And it can range, like I said, from very simple sentences. I've used this with my kids who are barely talking, just to create simple sentences, to my higher level students. Like, we've paired this with a reading passage with really complex vocabulary and things like that, and it's been like it could really fit a wide range, it can work well for students with a wide range of needs. We just get to be creative to figure out how to make that work. So stay tuned for more ideas. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you soon.